All right. Hi, this is my project on stereotypes versus authentic representation in American Indian youth literature. Um, First of all, why does it matter? Youth literature, when kids read books, it common shapes their understanding of the world around them, and when they learn this at a young age, it could be hard if the information that is being put out there is not correct. It could be hard for them to unlearn it because it's just ingrained into their brain because when they're younger, they take everything they hear as truth. And then ultimately, as they get older, that will create stereotypes or false awareness, and ultimately having a negative impact on society because it leads to racism and bullying in younger kids and just a lack of awareness of how society works or how American Indians actually live their life day to day. And some common stereotypes I wanted to go over were some people view the American Indians as savage. Um, a lot of times in movies, like right here, we have Indian princess. Um, and then here, Peter Pan, they're wearing like clothing that they used to wear back then. So that creates a sort of the American Indian culture as seen as a pastime and not really anything that people use to show their culture in today's world. So we kind of just, or movies seem to portray American Indian culture as only a pastime. Um, yeah, so that can be harmful, obviously. And then examples in literature, the two main ones that are super easy to find is Island of the Blue Dolphins. I remember reading this in fourth grade, and it shows it from the American Indian perspective, but it doesn't it can't relate to today's world where it's from a really far past time like I talked about before. And then Little House on the Prairie is written from the settlers' perspective, and it doesn't show how the American Indians were affected in that sort of situation. So, also the other one I wanted to talk about was like this is the biggest one by far is Thanksgiving stories. A lot of the time, they're the books and the history. It's written from the settlers and the colonizers' perspectives, and I think it's harmful that we don't have much like written stories or information on what it was like from the American Indian side because so we gain a better understanding of what it was like for them back then as well. As well as when we do hear about these stories, they're kind of sugar coated, especially in American youth literature, to make sure that it's digestible for a younger audience, but also they leave out a lot of the violence. It seems to be like everybody was happy, but when we look into the actual history, that's not too much of what happened. Um, yeah, so they also appear in like holidays like Thanksgiving. And then I just wanted to write like what authentic representation would look like. I think if we shift from stereotypes to native authors telling their own stories in American Indian youth literature, that can create a lot more of like personal experiences and being able to empathize with what their experiences were, and then historical narratives. Yeah, like I talked about before, it ignores a lot of the violence and indigenous perspectives that went on. And then Debbie Reese highlights misconceptions in youth education as well, and it results in inaccurate and misleading understanding of history that could also be harmful. Um, and then just my personal takeaways. Stories do shape perception, especially at a young age. So, whatever you read, you take as truth when you're younger. And it's just important that we're making sure that it is important that we don't fully show what happened, because it could be a little bit too much when um, the audience is younger, but also we're making sure that we don't create a false narrative. And yeah, that just shows the importance of accurate depictions, because you can see the negative impacts of not showing it already. Racism in society and unawareness, creating stereotypes, all of those things are bad. And I don't think there's much we can do to stop it now, since it's already happened, but we can have awareness of what actually is truth and what is a stereotype. And we could work to reverse stereotypes through awareness. So, yeah, thank you so much. How do I end this video?